Death Stranding is a game that you either love or hate, with an equal amount of said love and hate being thrown around when discussing the game. It was the much anticipated return of legendary game developer Hideo Kojima after he split ways with Konami over MGS5 and Silent Hills. So what did I think of it personally? Well, despite certain reservations I had going in, I have to say that I'm in love with this game, and its world and its characters, its gameplay, and pretty much everything about it. It's such a unique, standout AAA title, and I think it deserves all the respect in the world for even coming out in the first place. And this video is really explaining why I feel that way and why I love this game so much. So there are going to be spoilers in this, just so you know, proceed accordingly. If you've seen my Portable Ops video, then you'll know that I'm not a Kojima superfan, but I also don't hate him in the way that some other people do either. Kojima is a guy who's created so many unique characters, deep worlds, and explored numerous interesting contemporary concepts and themes, and for that he is undeniably talented. Even as a director of action and scenes and actors, he has so much style, and although clearly wearing his inspirations on his sleeve, uses them to great effect to create a style wholly his own. He is, however, not great at writing dialogue, and seems to rely quite heavily on characters monologuing the lore of whichever game they're in.
His name is Nikolai Stepanovich Sokolov.
Sokolov.
Sokolov, 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 Sokolov.
Sokolov?
That's right. Sokolov, Sokolov, Sokolov.
Sokolov. Sokolov.
Sokolov, Sokolov, Sokolov,
Sokolov.
Dr. Sokolov. Dr. Sokolov, 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 Sokolov.
You must be Sokolov.
I'm finished!
Sokolov.
Sokolov, Sokolov.
Sokolov is ours!
As well as their own motivations in a way that tends to come across as unnatural and a little stilted, and Death Stranding really isn't an exception to this. It's guilty of having some lengthy cutscenes where Sam is mostly just sat down as another character explains something to him in gross detail, and it can come across a little bit robotic. This roboticness does kind of fit in with the theme of the game though, whether intentional or not. The game is about rebuilding America, and in doing so, the connections between people. So the clinical nature of a lot of the performances kind of plays into this idea that people have been isolated from each other, and don't really know how to interact with humans properly because there's been such isolation between communities. Even Sam's aversion to being touched kind of plays into this idea now that I think about it. Back on track to the writing specifically though, like I said, I have my issues with it, and although excited about this game, I was a little worried that with him seemingly having complete creative control, we would get something way too over the top and a mess story-wise. But honestly, I think mostly this isn't the case, and it came out remarkably well and has become one of my favorite games of all time. Yes, the game is packed with certain Kojima-isms, let's call them.
We run together.
Run.
Yeah. Like Mario and Princess Peach.
But it's also remarkably simple and effective when it comes to the majority of the gameplay. The story is interesting too, but for me, that core gameplay loop just works wonders. Sure, you'll have to fight an oily Troy Baker and his super dog from time to time, but a majority of your time with Death Stranding is just this. And I absolutely love that. I know a good chunk of people are probably not fans of the main gameplay loop of delivering packages, but personally I just find it so unique and refreshing. The fact that the devs managed to figure out how to make walking engaging is insane to me. It's all these small little additions, like adding a balancing system and making the terrain actually impact your travel in a meaningful way. It does so much to make every little delivery feel like this epic quest. Before Death Stranding, I always wanted to play a game that captured those shots in Lord of the Rings where it's the Fellowship hiking across beautiful landscapes. And for me, Death Stranding is the game that's come closest to capturing that feeling of awe and adventure. No joke, when I watched the gameplay trailer and saw that you could dynamically place ladders, I instantly pre-ordered. It sounds dumb to say this out loud, but the concept of a game where you plot out a trail and travel across terrain using various different tools in a fairly realistic realistic-ish way was just so intriguing to me. I think I just like the idea of going on a long hike, but I don't want to actually do any of the physical work involved, which is something I learned the hard way. When I was younger, probably 13 or 14, I did this thing called the Duke of Edinburgh Award. It's pretty much just a 1 or 2 day hiking trip. Like, there are different levels, but the basic one that I did, which is the Bronze Award, was just 1 or 2 days going on like a walk, in combination with some camping stuff, you know, making a tent and things of that nature. It's a lot more exciting on paper than when you actually have to do it, because you have this vision in your mind of being with a bunch of friends in the isolated, beautiful wilderness, surviving off the land like explorers or frontiersmen. But in reality, you're mostly just following set paths or walking along roads, still very much in towns and villages, even if they are somewhat rural. Like, the most off the grid we ever got was maybe cutting through some woodland, but 90% of what we were walking across was just fields and like paths that have already been set, which, looking back on it now, is probably the smarter decision than just getting a bunch of teenagers to run around wildly. And even with this more like restricted approach, I guess, it was still pretty difficult for me. As a teenager, I don't think I fully grasped how much my back and shoulders would ache carrying 15 kg minimum for hours and hours on end, especially as someone who is pretty skinny and not exactly Dwayne Johnson levels of built. Also, most of my friends decided not to do it, so other than maybe 2 people from my group, I was mostly just indifferent with everyone else, which made the whole thing worse. But thanks to the power of video games, I don't have to experience that physical or emotional pain anymore. Mostly.
Of course. It's my luck.
I think we've all had a fantasy about just dropping everyday life and just setting out into the wilderness to live off the land and have a simple life. And weirdly, Death Stranding captures that feeling better than any other game to me, despite the boatloads of survival crafting games that you can find that claim to fulfill that specific fantasy. Although the story has complicated elements and the world itself is insanely detailed, for the most part you're just delivering a package from A to B, and there's something so appealing and calming about that simplicity. But as simple as it is, it still remains engaging. Something about each step mattering, something about the terrain actually feeling like terrain as opposed to just slight elevations that can be overcome by spamming jump, makes all the difference in immersing you into this role and the world itself. Coming home after a hectic day at school and just listening to some music as you walk across these beautiful landscapes has a genuinely unlimited appeal to me, and no other game has worked as well for me in that respect. Even games with more varied environments just lack those brilliant core walking, weight and stamina mechanics, and just that fun feeling of being on a true expedition across uncharted lands. And sure, sometimes the balancing mechanic can be a little bit finicky, but 99% of the time it works as intended. The player-built structures do to some extent take away from that feeling of going on an expedition into uncharted lands, but not only can you just play offline if it bothers you, but even when it is present, player structures are only super prevalent during the late game, and most of the time I think they work as they were intended. The player-built structures really do create this sense of connection, despite the fact that you never see any other players. It's a unique idea, and there's an odd sense of community that forms when you finish off a building project or come back to one you started a while ago and see that people have contributed to it. Player structures like zip lines and roads can really change the game drastically and make it easier to grind stars that you earn after completing deliveries, but the option to just hike around and stick with ladders and climbing anchors is still there. And if the structures really do bother you, you can just go offline and maintain a more lonely, isolated atmosphere. Speaking of the environments and atmosphere, I think the actual locations you traverse are really great visually, and there's a decent amount of variety. Some of my favorite areas are the marshy highlands of the eastern region, the almost Martian-looking rocky sprawls in the south of the central region, and the giant causeway-esque looking areas near the waterfalls of the central region as well. I also really like the smaller, abandoned urban sprawls, and they were so much fun to explore that I kind of wish they were a little bit more prominent. Like, it was giving a lot of like urban exploration, almost stalker vibes, and I really enjoyed exploring them. There really isn't a single environment that I disliked or got bored of, because they're all so detailed, and the terrain mechanics, like I said, make none of these areas boring to traverse. To this day, however many years later, I still find myself stumbling upon a site that I'd never seen before, or a new pathway that I never thought to traverse. It's such an achievement, and I just love all of these areas to death. The actual geography itself is very clearly not accurate to the actual real world United States, but I think that's what adds to the idea of the world being changed so drastically. Like, after this apocalyptic event, the world has just been scrambled completely, and now we have the Scottish Highlands and what is supposed to be Washington DC for some reason. Like, that concept is super cool to me. Rather than a virus or a nuclear weapon, the reason the world ended is because of this pattern throughout human history and this almost eldritch-like event that must have been so scary and unexplainable to the vast majority of people. It gives you so much creative leeway to do interesting things with the apocalypse setting that a nuclear weapon or a virus couldn't do. Like, why does the rain make you age now? Why do people explode like nukes when they die? Why is Sam immortal? Who cares? It's cool and scary and unique. The BTs honestly feel like the weakest link of the apocalypse though, to be honest. Like, they are a threat early game, but after getting some blood grenades and that sneak attack move, they become fairly easy to deal with. But to me, that's kind of part of the journey. You go from being thrown into this completely foreign environment and forced to learn the rules, to essentially rebuilding humanity single-handedly and dealing with all of your threats like they're minor inconveniences. The mules make up for the BTs though in terms of difficulty because they generally remain fairly challenging throughout the entire game. The stuff with the mules is really some of the funnest and most tense stuff in the game, and I think they're a great contrast to the BTs in terms of how you deal with them in gameplay scenarios. Also, back onto the combat though, can we just appreciate the fact that you can make grenades out of your own piss and shit? Like, it's just such a cool and unique idea. And even the idea of turning your blood into bullets. Like, what other game can you fire your own blood out of a shotgun and throw a piss grenade? Like, it's just awesome. And speaking of where you get those piss and shit grenades from, I really like the safe house area. Great segue as always. These segments give Sam and Lou a lot of characterization, and it almost gives me the vibe of a life sim where you can just take a shower, drink some energy drinks, and check on Lou. You know, completely kind of almost meaningless stuff, but it's there if you want to do it. I honestly wish it was expanded even more as well. Like, give us more customization options for both Sam and the room itself, give us more stuff to do in there. Maybe you could do some like exercises or something and it could increase your speed temporarily or your like carry weight, I don't know, I just like spending time there, so I'd like to do more stuff in it. Sam is also a great protagonist. He seems very cliche at first, but he has these little mannerisms and quirks that make him stand out as a character, and Norman Reedus does a fantastic job in the role. Some of my favourite stuff in any Kojima game ever is the relationship between Sam and Lou, and the bond that forms between them. You really feel that connection Sam does just because of how much time you spend with them, and all the trials and tribulations you go through together. Of course, there's the added layer of Sam having lost his family in the past, which is done great as well, but the fact that the game doesn't feel the need to drill in unnecessary dialogue about how well you're getting along and trusts that you'll feel the same connection Sam does is great. It's executed so subtly and minimally and almost realistic in a way that is kind of surprising for the standards that Kojima sets. And that core relationship was the main emotional connection I had with the story, since a lot of it is fairly clinical in how it's delivered. That being said though, I did like the side characters. They're all designed really well and memorable in their own ways, but Fragile and Deadman are the standouts because of their closer connection to Sam. And the both of them are honestly great, and I really enjoyed their dynamic with Sam, and I genuinely did start to care about them partway through the game. Mads Mikkelsen also stole the show as Cliff, with his segments being a great change of pace and visually such a great shake-up from the rest of the game. His segments honestly make me wish that we get a game someday that's just the movie 1917 as a game. Like, I want a game with the Death Stranding mechanics where you're just like a courier delivering messages between trenches, maybe having some small skirmishes here and there, avoiding environmental hazards, exploring like deep dark trenches. That would be awesome. And I like that we do get a little bit of that here in Death Stranding. Cliff's design is just awesome as well, and he has so much iconic iconography associated with him, like the barbed wire spider webs, the baby dolls, the oil running down his face like tears, the piles of meat strapped to the tanks. So much awesome and visually creative stuff going on with him. And of course his actual story as well is great and super unique. Higgs is a pretty decent villain as well, but he's almost overshadowed because of just how great Mads Mikkelsen is. But he still remains effectively menacing, and yet again he has such a cool visual design. In terms of one of the weaker characters, I'd say Sam's sister is probably there. Not only do we really not get that much characterization with her, but she's probably the most guilty of blatant exposition dumping. Like, that scene at the beach is genuinely a really bad way to explain a pretty interesting plot. Like, just sitting the player down and having essentially an animated slideshow go on in front of them was just not the best way to deliver this information. I'll be honest though, that exposition is just so interesting to me. I can see how if you really weren't hooked by this world, like those segments where a character is just essentially just explaining the lore to you could get boring, but I just love this world so much that I'm interested in anything it has to say. There are so many unique details and quirks that make the world stand out pretty much from anything else I've seen in the post-apocalyptic genre, science fiction genre, or pretty much anything in general. I can't really think of another world that's like the world of Death Stranding. And, you know, of course I haven't read everything, you know, I don't know everything about all pieces of media ever, but at least from my perspective, I've never seen anything like it. I will never forget the world of Death Strand. Whether it be the story, gameplay, music, presentation, or performances, everything about this game has love poured into it. And the fact that a game as strange and unconventional as this was given such a big budget honestly gives me a little bit of hope that the games industry isn't as fucked up as it is. Love him or hate him, Kojima is using the resources at his disposal to try something new and creative on both the gameplay and story front, and I think that alone deserves praise regardless of your thoughts on the final product. Personally though, I think that his vision came together remarkably well, and although he does deserve a lot of praise, I think that the devs at Kojima Productions deserve equal or even more praise for making these crazy ideas work. This world just works on every level for me. It's so detailed and atmospheric and unique and lonely and all of these things, and I love it to death and cannot wait for not only where the story goes, but where the gameplay goes in Death Stranding too. With all that being said though, I'm Christian Cryers and thanks for watching. Hey everyone, post-video discussion. The post-video discussion as usual is here, and sorry this video took a while to do. If you, pay attention to the community tab, you'll know that I'm also working on a big Harry Potter video. It's turning out to be like 3 hours plus, and I'm recording that with someone. So, you know, it's kind of been on and off about what times we can record, and that's kind of pushed things around a bit, and I haven't done the best job at balancing what I'm working on. So I'm really sorry about that, but I think I'll be able to post another video in between this one and the eventual release of the Harry Potter thing. So look out for that. I don't know if I should make any promises here, but yeah, videos generally won't take this long anymore unless I literally say I'm going on a break, but that's not happening anytime soon. So it really just took long because of, you know, balancing doing the Harry Potter video as well at the same time. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. This was sort of a spur of the moment thing to do this game. I think I think I was just working on something, and then I sat down and just opened Death Stranding, and I was like, damn, I love this game, and I should talk about it. And also, thank you for 600k on the zombie video, and weirdly, the Silent Hill 4 video just kind of blew up out of nowhere. Like, it's at 20k views, which is insane, because I don't know what it was that kind of boosted it in the algorithm, but thank you very much, and it seems that people are enjoying the videos as well. Thank you for the love on the Callisto Protocol video as well. Yeah, I will try to be more consistent, so I'm sorry for that, but, Joe, just thank you so much for watching, and, if you've got any money on hand, consider tipping on, Ko-fi, you know, any amount, $1 or $2, $3, $4, $5, whatever you got. I appreciate any amount you give, it's really greatly appreciated. And yeah, look out for more videos in the future, and thank you for all the support. And, yeah, see you guys. Bye.